Peace be upon you. Today, we're going to talk about surds and other radicals. I'm Mr. Ayman Arif. First of all, you need to distinguish between the radical and a surd. Radical is any number which is written with a radical sign, but a surd is a real irrational radical. Here we have examples for that. Root 2, root 3, and root 5 and root 6 are surds, but root 4 is a radical, but not so a surd. Since we have root 4 equals 2, and here we have radical 1 over 4 is a radical, but not a surd, because here we have root 1 over 4 equals to 1 over 2. Then root 2 and root 3 and root 5 and root 6, they are surds, but root 4 and root 1 over 4, they are radicals. Here we have like critical thoughts. First of all, root A is non-negative number such that root A by root A equals A. Numerical example, root 2 by root 2 should be 2. Okay. And here we have root A is never negative, so root A greater than or equal to 0. And root A is only real if A greater than or equal to 0. Okay, here we have two properties that you need to think about it. Here, if you face root AB, then you can write it root A, root B, equivalent to root A by root B, for A greater than or equal to 0 and B greater than or equal to 0. Here you have another property, which is if you face root A over B, it is equivalent to root A over root B. And notice that root A greater than or equal to 0 and B should be greater than or equal to 0. I'm sorry, not equal to 0, because if it's equal to 0, the denominator should be 0. And in this scenario, you're going to reach undefined value. Then B greater than 0 only. Let's deal with the first example. He said, write as a single surd. Here we have question A, root 2 by root 3. Then about question A becomes root 2 by 3 as a first step. And after that, it becomes root 6. This is for the first one. What about question B? Here we have root 18 over root 6. It becomes root 18 over 6, and we can divide 18 divided by 6 becomes 3. Then it becomes root 3. Here we have another thought, which is a simplest form. A radical in a simplest form, when the number under the radical sign is the smallest possible integer. Let's understand this concept with this example. Here we have root 72, and we need to write it in the simplest form. Then you need to think about two values. If you do multiplication for them, or the product of them should be 72, and one of them is the smallest possible integer, and the other should be the square number. Notice that 1 squared equals 1, and 2 squared equals 4, and 3 squared equals 9, and 4 squared equals 16, 5 squared equals 25, and so on. These numbers are square numbers. These numbers are square numbers. Then, obviously, we have 36 by 2, because root 36 by 2 equal to root 72. Then, we're going to deal with this root. It becomes root 36 by root 2, and it becomes 6 root 2. This is the final result. And here we deal with like the root or radical 72, and the simplest form for this root becomes 6 root 2. And notice that root 2 is the smallest possible integer. Okay. What about this question? He said simplify. Obviously, if you have, for example, 3x, add this 3x to 2x, you can add them. It becomes 5x. What if you have negative 2y, negative 3y? If you add these values, it becomes negative 5y. Same procedure. Here you have 3 root 3 and you have 5 root 5, or I'm sorry, 5 root 3. Then you're going to add them. Then the result should be 8 root 3. What about question B? 2 root 2 minus 5 root 2, the result should be negative 3 root 2. What about question or example 4? In this example, he said simplify. And notice that we have two different roots, which is 2 root 75 minus 5 root 27. Now, you're going to deal with this question, and you're going to try to simplify it. Then, root 75, first of all, equivalent to root 25 by 3. This is the first step. And notice that root 27 equivalent to 3 by something, which is, I think, 3 by 9, right? 3 by 9. And notice that 25 is a square value and 9 is a square number. Then it becomes 2 by root 25 by 3 minus 5 root 9 by 3. 9 by 3. Then it becomes 2 root 25 by root 3 minus, between bracket, minus 5 by root 9 by root 3. Then it becomes 2 by 5 becomes 10 root 3 minus 5 by 3 becomes 15 root 3. Then the result should be negative 5 root 3. What about question 5 or example 5? Here he said expand and simplify. Then here we have root 5 by 6 becomes 6 root 5 minus root 5 by root 5, it becomes 5. And this is the simplest form. Like, I think just only one step. Because root 5 by root 5 becomes 5. As we talked before that, we took root A by root A equals A, right? What about this question? This is a critical one. First of all, 6 by 1 becomes 6. And after that, 6 by 2 becomes 12 root 3. And after that, root 3 by 1 becomes root 3. And then root 3 by 2 root 3. It becomes 2 by 3 because root 3 by root 3 becomes 3. Then here we have 6, 12 root 3, and root 3 becomes 13 root 3. And here 2 by 3 becomes 6. Then 6 and 6 becomes 12. Then the result should be 12 plus 13 root 3. What about example 6? He said simplify. Here we have 5 minus root 2 all squared. Then obviously question A becomes 5 minus root 2 by 5 by negative root 2. Or you can make it directly like 5 squared, 5 squared, and then minus 2 by 5 by root 2 by 5 by root 2. And after that, plus root 2 squared, which is 2. Then 5 squared becomes 25, minus 2 by 5 becomes negative 10 root 2 plus 2. Then it becomes 27 minus 10 root 2. This is for the first question, which is question A. What about question B? I'll give you a minute to think about question B. You can think about this question. It's similar to question A. But here we have, if you remember the differences between two squares, which is x squared minus a squared becomes x plus a by x minus a. You can use the same concept because here we have x and a, positive, negative. Here we have positive, negative, and 7, 7, 2 root 5, 2 root 5. Then you can put it in this form. And about question B, you can put it in this form, which is 7 squared and minus 2 root 5 squared, 2 root 5 squared. It becomes 49 minus 2 squared becomes 4, and 5 squared becomes 5. I'm sorry, root 5 squared becomes 5. Then here you have 49 minus 20, because 4 by 5 becomes 20, and it becomes 29. As simple as that. These exercises for you, you're going to deal with them and you're going to find the solution in the next file, inshallah. And if you have any question, don't hesitate to communicate with me directly through my own WhatsApp. Thanks for watching. See you, inshallah, in the next video.